The following segment is sponsored by Daniel A. White and Associates.
It does not necessarily reflect the views of WDEL or Forever Media.
The Rick Jensen Show on 101.7 FM, 1150 AM, WDEL, and streaming to your smart speaker and mobile device.
Well, I am a happy camper client of Dan White and Associates, have been for many, many years. So they're all experts in retirement planning. And you got to really start that when you're 20s, but most of us really don't start that in our 20s. Andrew Wood is on the phone. He works out of the Middletown office. By the way, you can always call these folks at 888-690-8820, 888-690-8820, and get some advice. Don't charge anything, just to talk and say, listen, I have some concerns. And by the way, after the news at 1:30, like today, every Wednesday, you get a little free advice. Nice tip from the folks at Dan White and Associates. Andrew Wood. Hey, Andrew, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so retirement. People are always talking about that. A lot of changes going on in the world. What's our tip for today?
Sure. So it's funny. I'm a little bit of an Eagles fan. After you have a child, I think my level of fandom has definitely come down a little bit. But after the Eagles lost, we hear about Jason Kelce and potential for retirement and all those guys that have been with the team for a long time. And, a couple years back, you had Tom Brady who retired and then came out of retirement. And I came across an article. It's actually from last month, and it's talking about why more retirees are coming out of retirement, which I don't know about you, but most people when they come in here, that's never part of the conversation. It's really, I'm going to retire, but that later on down the road, I'm going to go back to work, right? Nobody really envisions that.
No, but people get bored, and there are things that they like to do. Yeah,
and that's exactly it. I mean, you would think with the inflation that's going on, high interest rates, volatility, continuing to take an impact on the market, you would think that a lot of this unretirement is more economic driven, but based on a recent study from F&G, it's about half, 50% of retirees are considering coming out of retirement. So
I'm not surprised.
I find that number to be pretty staggering, right?
So, real world stories. A friend of mine, Kansas City, said he's going to retire, and his son's going to take over the business. And so he goes on a trip. He comes back, hangs around the office a little bit. Goes on a trip, comes back, hangs around the office. Next thing you know, he's hanging around the office quite a bit. Same thing with other people I know who are older, and they have their own business. They retire, and what do? Well, they go to the office and hang around the office. Why? It's what they know. It's what they love to do, and they're home, and they kind of get bored, and that's it. I mean, a woman I know, she loves her husband, but she had a business and sold it, and she still likes to go in. And the cool thing is that they don't mind at all. So either get yourself a hobby or, I guess, get back to work. When these people that you're talking about go back to work, do they go back to work in the business they were in originally? Do they go back to be Walmart greeters? Or did they have their own businesses? And do they go back and just hang out with the folks who bought it? Where are they going? What are they doing?
So this article doesn't get into that level of detail, but it does say that 50% are considering unretiring because they enjoy the intellectual challenge, the stimulation from working, and I think that really is part of the conversation that even in our profession, I think it's really important to have. It's really what do you envision yourself doing, right? I mean, it could be grandkids. I see a lot of people that either volunteer, they're doing church work. Things like that. But it is really important to consider that. Even if you look at, the current workplace environment, we talked a little bit about how, in business and different companies have gone more the hybrid approach, meaning they're working a little bit from home, doing some, in-office work. But you continue to hear that specifically with retirees. It's, a hybrid retirement, meaning, I'm not working full-time, working in some capacity, maybe even with the old employer, continuing benefits, pay, things like that. But, you look at this hybrid retirement approach and, I think that's a way for younger retirees to help transition into that full retirement so they are satisfied, those earlier years. And then as they get older, obviously things will progress, and they might not want to work at all. But I think it's fascinating. We are seeing more and more of that. This generation is certainly different from generations of the past.
So, do you plan differently for that possibility?
You know what? It can be part of the conversation, especially when you might run into like an underfunded retirement plan. But I think what's important is to make sure that, if you decide to come out of retirement, I think most people want to do it because they want to, not because they have to. So I think the planning really should ultimately be the same for most people, especially if they have a well-funded retirement plan. But meaning, you plan for retirement, but if something comes up and you want to work, then that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're underfunded, I think really that hybrid approach might make a little bit more sense, especially those early years, so you're not as dependent on whether it's your assets or what have you.
Here in Delaware, we have, unfortunately, the highest unemployment rate in the region. And I was looking at those Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers, the U6 the U6 numbers, and that shows people who are unemployed, still looking, people who are unemployed, given up, people who are underemployed, they have 2 jobs, maybe 3 jobs, things like that. Is it even possible for people to be putting away for retirement? Let's say let's say someone in their 30s, right? And you look at the real estate market right now, and they're saying, oh, man, we're trying to save money for a house, but the real estate market's out of control. That might improve over the next couple of years, and interest rates might come down if the Fed decides to do that. But how do you do this when you know you have to do it, and you know you really have to start in your 30s, and it's such a struggle the way inflation and the economy is right now?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I do feel like the most successful, whether they're retirees or pre-retirees, and really I could say this to any, someone at any age, it really does come down to budgeting.
Yeah.
Making sure that you're trying to stick as close as possible to having a budget. But it's kind of fascinating that a lot of people that I see, they really don't know how much they spend, and I think it's one of those things where, again, regardless of age, whether your goals are to accumulate more or really save, even versus coming down, to an income plan, you got to figure out what's coming in versus what's going out. And if your goal is to save, then that might mean, cutting some of those expenses where you might not need, streaming service, cable, that kind of stuff. Lots of different ways that you can, really come up with a solid budget where you can still accomplish your goals, regardless of what they are.
It's a good point, and it's tough, and people don't talk about that enough, don't do it enough. For example, years ago, starting out in this business, no one makes any money, and I didn't have cable, and there are a lot of things we just didn't have. We would look for happy hours and, clip coupons and all that kind of stuff, and I find myself still doing that even today sometimes. So we did that and cut all this and said, well, okay, maybe it's just $20 a week. But you're talking about being in your 20s, and you say, okay, maybe it's just $20 a week or something, and put something away, and where you can invest it. Now, there are so many options of investing without any commissions and such like that. There are a lot of good options. Even you got these apps online, for example. I use some of those as well. So you can do it. You can get a start. And then I've always believed if you get your mindset regarding budgeting, and keep in mind all the little dopey things you buy. People don't write down the little dopey things they buy. but if you write them all down for 6 months, just for 6 months, all the little dopey things you buy too, and you realize, wait a minute, over 6 months, we spent $1,000 on machine snacks, together, both of you, like $500 over 6 months, machine snacks. Like, wait, what? And next thing you know, you're going through all this stuff. Oh, I got to have my, $8 coffee. Do you now? I mean, we didn't do any of that stuff because, again, had to really save. So to your point, you just have to do it, right? You just have to do it. Otherwise,
if that's truly your goal, you got to do it.
Yeah, if you want to have some money when you retire. if you don't want to be just like, well, you know what, I'm going to work till I die. I had a friend who just told me, I'm going to work till I die, work till I die. Well, unfortunately, before he was 65, he did. He died. And he was extraordinarily unhealthy, and I didn't want to hear about it. So is that your goal? And sadly, you got to think about these things. I know that you're not going to sit there and say something to somebody like I just said, but I know people need to think about it that way. And I'm glad you work with folks and help them out because I know you're really good at it.
Yeah, you got to look at all these things, and in this study, it even shows that 50% of pre-retirees and retirees don't work with a planner or financial advisor. So I think, the resources are out there. You got to use them. You got to take advantage of them.
There you go, Andrew Wood, Dan White and Associates, financial planners who specialize in retirement income, and every Sunday morning, 7 a.m. here on WDEL, 1150 AM, 101.7 FM. Dan White presents On Your Money. Always has some good advice then as well, right?
That's right. This Sunday's topic is losing money at the wrong time. I'm going to talk a little bit about sequential return risk, which something is very important to be aware of, and not a lot of people are aware of it. So it's going to bring that to light.
Good stuff. All right. Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it, man. Let's get to the phones at 302-529-1017. Oh, by the way, you can reach Andrew at 888-690-8820. 888-690-8820.